It is now time for oral questions. The member from Thornhill.
I'll do my best to help. My first question is to the Premier. Ontario's job crisis has reached a fever pitch, Premier. You have 600,000 people unemployed. Yet your idea of a job strategy is more studies and more reports, more spinning of bureaucratic wheels, like your budget's so-called Jobs Council, or handing out millions to companies like Wintronics only to have them turn around and leave. Ontario is Canada's largest province. We have the potential to succeed. You should strive for an environment that creates jobs and economic growth. Instead, you hide behind councils and summits and reports. Now, rather than listing off all the short-term jobs you have subsidized, thought of subsidizing, or plan to subsidize, tell us how many jobs this so-called Jobs Council will actually create, and if you don't have a direct answer, why are you doing it?
The Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, the budget creates 170,000 net new jobs, Mr. Speaker, with higher incomes on average. Later this morning, Mr. Speaker, I will be sharing with Ontarians.
I apologize to the House. I may have given you the impression that today it's okay to get loud. The opposite is true. Please. Minister.
Later this morning, I'll be sharing with Ontarians that fourth quarter GDP grew by 0.5%, an annual rate of 1.8%. We've recovered all the jobs and more since the recession. Consumer spending's back, Mr. Speaker. Economic growth is back. Business investment in machinery and equipment is at an all-time high, Mr. Speaker. It's time that member starts speaking positively about this great province that's poised for growth.
Supplementary.
Go to the head of the class. Moving on to the next example of empty gestures with no substance, your failed budget also talks about the creation of a productivity summit, but not unexpectedly, it is silent about any measures that would actually improve productivity. What is clear is that instead of reducing red tape for businesses, this Premier is going to bring in more consultants to tell him what every business in Ontario already knows and has been saying for years. You want to increase productivity in the province of Ontario, reduce the red tape burden on businesses. That's simple. Will the Premier get his head out of the clouds and adopt the Ontario PC Jobs Plan that reduces red tape, reduces business taxes, and gets people back to work?
Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, our tax plan for jobs and growth was the greatest reduction in business regulation in Ontario history. That member and his party voted against it. Mr. Speaker, they didn't listen to the Ontario Chamber of Commerce. They didn't listen to exporters and manufacturers. They didn't support a major bill in the last session, Mr. Speaker, that reduced burdens. Mr. Speaker, today, this morning, the CFIB is out with their business barometer, Mr. Speaker, and Ontario is now above the national average. It's a sign, according to them, that business confidence is coming back, the economy is growing. Your plan was a waste. The people of Ontario said no to you. They said yes to this government, and they're saying yes to a budget that creates 170,000 net new jobs, Mr. Speaker.
Final supplementary.
That's one angry man. He doesn't listen to us. He doesn't listen to them. He doesn't listen to the people. It's amazing that after 8 years at the helm, this Premier continues to rely on consultants to tell him what to do and still continues to fail. That brings us to the FIT program, which has been nothing short of disastrous. Your feed-in tariff program has caused energy prices to skyrocket, and it has killed jobs in Ontario. The Auditor General stated that for every green job created, we lose up to 4 jobs in the general economy. That means you have actually killed as many as 80,000 jobs in Ontario with the FIT program alone. Premier, how many people need to lose their jobs before you stop pushing this failed pet project? Are you too politically motivated to accept its failure, or do you simply not care about the damage?
Minister of Finance.
Pure fiction, Mr. Speaker. Ontario's green energy policies have created so far 20,000 net new jobs, Mr. Speaker. The member opposite may want to refer to one-off announcements. Well, let me tell you about some one-off announcements. Last week alone, Toyota, an $80 million investment in Woodstock, 400 new jobs. That's not one-off. That's impressive growth from a big company. Ford Motor Company adding a third shift to the Essex engine plant to build the Ford F-150, 100 new jobs. That's not a one-off. That's confidence in the future of Ontario. General Motors, $245 million in St. Catharines.
Answer.
300 new jobs. That's not a one-off. That's confidence in Ontario, confidence in the working people of this province, confidence in our...
New question. Stop the clock, please. Be seated, please. Be seated, please.
New question, the member from Thornhill.
My question is back to the Premier. Premier, if your goal was to reduce a budget that was heavy on rhetoric and light on action, then congratulations, you have succeeded. That's correct. 57 times you used the word review, 26 times you used the word consult, 17 times you used the word explore, 17 times you used the word consider. It is no wonder that your ministers don't have time to do anything. They're all too busy talking. The one thing you don't seem to consider in this budget is actually doing something. We have a recommendation. Will you finally adopt our jobs plan and actually get Ontarians working again?
Premier. Minister of Finance. Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, their job plan is to hire poll clerks and DROs and force an unnecessary election. We reject that, Mr. Speaker. People don't want that. You know, Mr. Speaker, they want an election, Mr. Speaker. They forget that their so-called jobs plan, their change book, was rejected by the people of Ontario, Mr. Speaker, only 6 short months ago. So, no, we don't accept your job plan for more poll clerks, more DROs, more election workers, Mr. Speaker. We need a steady hand at this time as the Ontario economy is beginning to grow and get back on its feet. We reject your jobs plan for poll clerks and DROs, and we're going to stand and implement this budget, which has been embraced by most major business and economic groups in Ontario, and I'll share quotes with the member after.
Thank you.
No more poll clerks.
Thank you. Supplementary.
I've got a new plank for the jobs plan. That minister should step down. Premier, Minister, it is clear that the phrase inaction is lost on you. It sure doesn't figure prominently in the budget.
Member from Peterborough,
24 times you used the word negotiate, 27 times you used the word encourage, 17 times you used the word facilitate, 14 times you used the word discuss. The time for talk is long over. Negotiations have ended. Discussions are done. Forget the blustering. Everyone knows what you refuse to accept. We need action. We need it now. Will this Premier do what's right? Will he do what's necessary? Will he abandon this weak budget and adopt the Ontario PC plan that will put people back to work?
Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, here's what Janet Ecker said. The government is making tough and necessary choices, Mr. Speaker. Here's what the DBRS credit rating agency said. Overall, DBRS views the continuation of the fiscal recovery plan and the increasing emphasis on cost containment as an encouraging step in the right direction. Here's what Mary Webb, the senior economist at Scotiabank, said. The challenge for this government in this budget was to provide a credible repair plan, and so it has. It has provided a broad-based plan, detailed, strategic, that they hope will keep them on deficit reduction track with even more moderate growth. Mr. Speaker, the member opposite wants to force an election. He wants all of us to resign. We don't want to do that, Mr. Speaker. We want to build a better and stronger future for all Ontarians. I urge him to quit playing.
Thank you. Supplementary.
Speaker, don't you dare, Minister, pin an election on us. Take responsibility yourself. Premier, we've been talking about job creation, but all we've heard from that end is
observation. Order. My observation is that we have people yelling at each other across the floor, not even associated with the questioner or the answer. I am asking for your attention, please. Member from York, again, when I'm speaking. Thank you. Final supplementary.
We've been talking about job creation for a very long time. All we get is rhetoric. Ontario has been hearing that stuff for years. Meanwhile, between the failed FIT program, the lack of a job strategy, energy prices skyrocket, 600,000 people remain out of work, your government continues to do nothing. You refuse to admit your mistake and back away from the failed FIT program. You ignore calls for action to help the 600,000 people unemployed. Simple. What other economic hardships will need to
you.
Ontario before you consider all they have in common?
Minister of Finance.
June 09, Ontario's created more jobs than all the provinces combined, Mr. Speaker. We have recovered more jobs with higher incomes since the Depression. Employment is above pre-recession levels. Consumer investment is above.
Member from Cambridge, come to order.
Ontario is absolutely on the right track to getting back to strength, to continuing to build our economy. As to an election, Mr. Speaker, I'm afraid that member and his leader
from Bruce Green, Owen Sound, come to order.
Themselves, Mr. Speaker. Right. They put themselves in a corner where they wouldn't negotiate, they wouldn't talk, they wouldn't offer constructive ideas. Instead, they walk out, they want an election, aided and abetted by their friends in Ottawa. Mr. Speaker, we don't want an election. As to that, I hope the member from Ottawa will call her colleagues in the federal government.
Thank you. New question.